Lines, and today we're looking at how Latin America and Europe are pushing the United Nations to end the war on drugs. A leaked draft of the United Nations' latest long-term strategy document for combating illegal drugs shows that countries from Latin America and Europe want to end the war on drugs model and transition to a public health model focused on decriminalization and looking beyond prohibition. This leaked document provides new insight into the international community's growing revolt over the exclusively prohibitionist policies set by the United States. This draft document, which would normally be kept hidden until all disagreements have been worked out for the final copy, provides the discussion for the UN's scheduled 2014 high-level statement on drug policy, which itself would form the basis of the UN's 2016 General Assembly review that would set international drug policy for the following decade. This leaked draft shows major disagreement with U.S. drug policy and follows up on the Organization of American States calling for market solutions to hemispheric drug policies, especially concerning cannabis. In Latin America, Colombia, Mexico, and Guatemala have expressed that total drug prohibition keeps the dangerous drug cartels in power. Ecuador directly asks the UN to end prohibition, asking for, quote, more effective results in addressing the world drug problem, end quote, and, quote, deliberations on different approaches that could be more efficient and effective, end quote. Venezuela wants the UN to examine, quote, the economic implications of the law enforcement approach in tackling the world drug problem, end quote. In Europe, Switzerland wants the UN to note that decades of prohibition have meant, quote, drug consumption prevalence has not been reduced significantly, and that the consumption of new psychoactive substances has increased in most regions of the world, end quote. Norway wants to ask the UN about, quote, decriminalization and a critical assessment of the approach represented by the so-called war on drugs, end quote. And the entire European Union as a bloc tells the UN, quote, drug users should be entitled to access to treatment, essential medicines, care, and related support services, end quote. The drug war facade is beginning to crumble. Since 1961, when the efforts of the first drug czar, Harry J. Anslinger, prompted the UN to create the Single Convention Treaty on Narcotic Drugs, the international policy on drugs has been the U.S. policy on drugs: prohibition, criminalization, and eradication. But now the Latin American countries that suffer prohibition violence and the European countries that suffer drug addiction are ready to begin a new policy that recognizes the realities of drug use and drug markets. This leaked document shows the U.S. to increasingly be the outlier, clinging on to the failed prohibitionist policies of the 20th century as the rest of the world confronts the realities of the 21st. And this is happening not only on the international level, but of course the national level, with Washington and Colorado passing their marijuana legalization laws, and Alaska and Oregon sure to follow in 2014, perhaps California, Massachusetts, Maine, and Rhode Island in 2016. The wall is beginning to crumble, and the United States finds itself on the outside as these other more forward-looking countries begin to recognize the realities of the drug market and the need to end prohibition. We've already seen it begun in Uruguay, where the lower house has already voted to legalize marijuana and marijuana markets. It's expected to pass the Senate, and it's going to be signed by the president. We've also seen a change in Portugal, where since 2001, personal possession of all drugs has been decriminalized and addicts are no longer treated like criminals. In Portugal, we have seen drug use, drug dependence, drug overdoses, crime. All these measures of drug harm have been reduced or not gone up since drug decriminalization has taken place in Portugal. And of course, we've got the 30-year experience of the Netherlands, where since the 70s, marijuana use and small marijuana purchases have been tolerated in the coffee shops. But we still see problems having to do with the continued prohibition of marijuana and other drugs in neighboring countries. In the south, in Maastricht in the Netherlands, they have a lot of problem with French, Belgium, and German tourists coming in for marijuana. That creates a lot of traffic problems and a lot of other associated ills for this small European city. But the problem is not with Maastricht having legalized or tolerated marijuana coffee shops. The problem was with France, Belgium, and Germany not having these legalized coffee shops. As we are finding with Washington and Colorado as well, having decriminalization or legalization in one area means that you're going to have greater problems being reported by the neighboring areas, like in the United States, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, all complaining about medical marijuana and legalized marijuana coming from the West. It has to be done all or nothing, folks. We've got to get legalization across the world and across the United States as well. All right, folks, that time, of course, means it is time for us to take a break. So we're going to do so, and we hope you get the opportunity to take yourself a nice herbal relaxation break. When we come back, we'll have Bacon Dan on the line for our Daily Toker Tunes.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina.